All right, Jeff, welcome to the Polling Focus podcast. We're really excited to have you here. Let's start by hearing a little bit about you, your role. You work at Lenovo.
Yeah.
You've got a background in gaming. I'm really excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me. I don't want to go bore everybody hearing it. So my official title is senior, kind of like a senior product manager, but externally I'm basically Lenovo Esports Global Manager. So everything that comes through esports from an education or commercial perspective, especially when it comes to service and solutions, comes through me. Like I'm building out service and solutions for education, for K through 12, higher ed, globally, different geographies. But I also act as our lead consultant as well, globally, internally and externally. So if people have questions about, what does the vision look like and what's coming up in the next 5 years, they usually ping me and they're like, what are your thoughts on this? But a lot of it is also customer feedback. So I take customer feedback, find out where gaps are, where are people having trouble. And the whole goal is to really build out service and solutions that just aren't there to make Lenovo money. They're really there to make, whether it be mainly K through 12 and higher ed right now, successful. If it's not going to help make them successful, we don't do it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. So it's kind of a different approach than a lot of what are out there right now, where some of our competitors are very, very product heavy, product push. We don't even talk about that stuff. We see product, even though Lenovo is a massive product company, number one in the world for PCs. When we started this program, I was very forward in saying we need to be consultative. We need to help, whether it's 6 PCs or 600, shouldn't matter. It is, what are the gaps these schools are having? What problems are they having? And it turns out 99% of them, again, this started about 4 years ago, didn't know anything about esports. They just wanted education. And then how do we build that? And that's really where we kind of made everything happen. And it's been awesome since then. Now it's, in the next couple of years, it's going to be even better.
Yeah. And it's growing so fast, even in the region here, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But I do want to start with a fun question, because we had Caleb from Triangle Esports Academy on.
Cool dude.
And I asked him at the end of the episode, I said, what were your top 5 favorite video games of all time? And I kind of want to lead with that to start and hear from you.
I love
it. Whether that's some old school games or even some like relatively new that you've been playing that you're really enjoying. I'd love to hear your ranking unofficially.
Yeah. I mean, I'm weird because I'm kind of all over the place. Usually you kind of have a genre heavy, like you kind of stick with one genre, and I don't. So we'll start from way back. My favorite NES game, because I was born in '78, so I was actually there when the NES launched, was definitely the original Final Fantasy. So between that and Dragon Warrior, that really started like my RPG type feel, and it was just so cool to have something different. Like, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and Kid Icarus and all those were fun. But those were the two I really gravitated towards. And then, when it came to like cross-play, Mario Kart was great because it's really one of the first games you could compete against other people, even though they're on the same controller, which is cool. Super Nintendo.
Okay.
Yep. And then one of my favorite games came out with the 64, which was GoldenEye. And I oddly enough had become so good that in college I couldn't even play anymore. Like my friends would make me go in the back of the room and drink while they played, and then they'd be like, okay, now you can come in, because it just, something clicked. And I was really good at it. And I was definitely more of a gamer than a lot of my friends. They were, they would play Mario, or they would play a lot of the sports games, FIFA, and back then it was NHL 94, I think was the big one on Sega Genesis. And those were fun too. But when it came to first-person shooters, I was kind of like, oh man, this is awesome. And I was really good at it, which led me eventually into Halo. So Halo and Halo 2, I loved them and would play them. And this is when I had time. When you have a family and kids and stuff like that, the time to play games really isn't there much anymore. But I think if then were now, and again, that was back in the year probably 2002, 2003, right when the original Xbox kind of came out, and then they had the Xbox 360 with online, with live. I probably would have been a semi-pro or pro Halo player.
Yeah.
Because my kill-death ratio was just insane back then. Now it's different, right?
Sure,
like now there's so many more gamers. Even if you look at Halo Infinite now, like I can step in and do okay, but there's just so many more gamers now than there were.
Yeah.
Like people who consider themselves gamers and now I'm 45, so my reaction time is not what it used to be. They just clean house. So, but Halo definitely set me on a path that I just loved. But then I got into still the RPG games. So Fallout was definitely one of my favorites. I loved, and still do, love Fallout. You can just get lost in those games. Skyrim is another very open RPG-esque game that I really love. But now my son is 10 years old, and he's part of XP League. And he's a gamer. Who would have thought? I mean, he plays sports too. Like I grew up playing soccer and basketball and golf, and now he's playing soccer and wants to try basketball and stuff like that. But he's also a gamer as well, and he plays Apex Legends, and so do I. So we get to play together. But he's just so nasty compared to me.
Sure.
Like he can spin around and shoot people in the face, and I'm like I'm trying to get there, and he's like, "I already took care of it." And I'll play Fortnite with him, and he just annihilates me. There's a pride level where you're like, that was awesome, but then you're like, damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I can't hang anymore. So I think that's kind of my favorite type of games. But then I even go all the way back to the MUDs, where you're really doing text-based adventures, and you're letting your imagination kind of take you there. But I have so many really good memories of just gaming and meeting people. EverQuest and EverQuest 2 were a huge part of my life in college, probably more so than they should have been, with raiding 6 hours, to try to find this very epic drop of whatever, or going for your epic when they were up to level 50. So it's just, all of those are kind of my favorite-ish games, but right now Apex Legends is kind of where I run if I can, just because my son plays it and it's fun.
Yeah, it almost seems like a lot of the like competitive games now are so like mechanics based, and just getting really good either like mouse and keyboard or being able to like move quickly, which really lends itself well to younger people. But I think it's cool to hear from you, kind of tracing your experience with different games and how that's sort of even connected to your career. And I'd love to hear just your general thoughts on how you've seen esports change, or even like begin and start to change over the years, and also connecting that to your business experience too. And you mentioned when we were talking before this that you were one of the only people who had an MBA and a business background that got into the space early. So would love to hear just a little bit about how the space has changed and then how you've gotten into it as well.
Yeah. So, when I had gone to undergrad in Oswego State, which is a very small, very cold school in upstate New York, back then I was going to be an earth science teacher, oddly enough. And I still like astronomy and all that stuff, but rocks aren't for everybody. But I quickly found in college that business was more my thing, talking to people, stuff like that. So I kind of did my 4 or 5 years after college just trying to find what you actually enjoy. I did the retail management thing, I did sales, I did radio, all that. And I ended up being a customer service at Performance BMW up the road. And a brand manager came in, and I was talking to him. I didn't know he was a brand manager. I thought he was a customer. And he's like, you should not be writing tickets for car repair. He's like, you're thinking way outside. And so I went back and I got into Syracuse University to get my MBA in innovation management. And when I was there, I was like, I want to get into gaming. Like at that point, I was very much like, if I'm going to make money, I at least want to try to do it with something that I really enjoy.
Sure.
And I loved gaming. It was fun. And back then, a lot of my friends were not gamers. They were mainly jocks because I grew up playing all sorts of different sports. And then when I went to Syracuse, they're like, "Are you nuts?" They're like,
Yeah.
"Why would you get an MBA
Sure.
and go into gaming?" They're like, "This is, a top entrepreneur, finance, accounting school." They're like, "You could go into any of those, come out making like $150,000 to start." And I'm like, "But I don't want to do that. I could do that.
Sure.
Like I get all that stuff, except for accounting. Never do accounting." So they're like, "We don't even have anybody in our alumni network that works at a gaming company."
Yeah.
They're like, it's just, back then it was very production heavy. So it was all the publication companies. So you had Activision and Blizzard were two different companies. You had Nintendo was one of the big ones, obviously. And then you started to have a smattering of others, like Bethesda was obviously pretty big because of the Fallout series. Halo at that point was not owned by Microsoft.
Bungie, right?
It was Bungie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a really Ubisoft was there. So you really didn't have a lot of options. You were either living on the West Coast and crossing your fingers, or you tried to get into Ubisoft from whether it was Red Storm Entertainment here in North Carolina or something of that sort. So I graduated and I could not find a job. And I had interviews, a lot of them. And it came down to the fact of even production of a game. Like I was interviewing for entry level or junior level to produce games and market them. And they're like, "You are way overqualified for this, yet you've never launched a game. So we can't hire you."
Yeah.
And they're like, "You're actually director level," or not director level, like senior level of kind of putting it out there from a production, because I had the project management background and the business acumen to tie business with marketing, with PR, I knew how things worked. And they didn't really have that. But they're like, "We can't hire you because you've never launched a game." And I'm like, "So do you not think I could?" They're like, "Oh, we think you could, but you've never proven it." And I'm like, "Well, damn." So the Escapist magazine ended up picking me up because I was doing PR for a company. There was a pro gamer called Fatality back in the day who was huge in like the Quake world and Doom. And I met one of the guys from the Escapist magazine, and they're like, "We think you're great. Do you want to move down to North Carolina?" And I had already been living in North Carolina, went to Syracuse, came back. And they're like, "We want you to do PR for us." And then the Escapist magazine started growing. They're like, "We want you to build out our marketing and communications and community." So at that point in time, I had an MBA, and Alex McCrease, who owned the company at the time, he was actually a lawyer. So he liked taking different people from different backgrounds and kind of putting them in the space. But the majority of people that worked there were all super gamers.
Yeah.
So it took, even when I was hired, I was brought in and I didn't fit the gamer mold. I was 6'2", I was 205 pounds. I still played sports. I didn't look and feel like a stereotypical gamer back in 2008, 2007, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it took 6 months of working there and proving that I, A, knew that I could do the business side, but B, that I could talk the talk also. Like I wasn't talking about it from a business acumen perspective. I actually was a gamer. So I was using my experience and what I would do in order to, kind of build that out. And once people and I would get quizzed. They would throw something out there, whether it was the production manager, one of the people, they're like, "Well, what about the Triforce?" I'm like, "What about it?"
Yeah.
And they would ask me just something random, or from Fallout, or from Halo, or name any like quiz type thing that you would only know if you were a gamer. And I'd be like, "It's actually," or I'd say a line from a movie, and they'd be like, "Wow, you actually know that?" I'm like, "Why wouldn't I know that? Like I am a gamer. Just because I play sports also doesn't mean that I don't know all this stuff." Even during high school, I'd play soccer and and basketball or whatever it might be, but I'd play Magic the Gathering with my friends at lunch.
Sure.
Completely different group of friends.
Different people.
And they'd be like, "Why are you hanging out with them?" I'm like, "Why do you have a problem with my other friends?"
Yeah.
And then the nerds would all be like, "Well, you're a jock." So I didn't fit into either. I was kind of like this hybrid, and I had that all the way through most of my career until Lenovo picked me up when the Escapist closed. And I was a marketing manager, and then I became an operations manager. And then they wanted to take their Y series product, and they're like, we really need to make it gaming. So they called me in, the senior VP of e-commerce and my ED of North America e-com called me, and they're like, okay, you're the only person at Lenovo out of the 10, 20,000 people that work here who have actually worked in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
We want you to launch our gaming division. And I was like, what now? No big, but they said it as so nonchalant.
Sure.
As if, it's just a gaming brand. And I'm like, okay. And that is what became Legion, which now is Legion. And then about 4 years ago, give or take a little bit, I had left for a little bit. They brought me back as an analyst, and then this position opened up. They're like, we want to do, all these salespeople are having opportunities about esports in schools. And there's this opportunity to really shine and do something different in esports. Can you build this one now? Knowing that you have that gaming background, you understand the space. And I was like, yeah, and that's when Lenovo Esports was born. So it just, having that MBA then was very odd and very off-putting to a lot of people, because I would talk to directors, marketing directors at these production companies, and know far more overall than they did when they had a very, very direct way of doing things in marketing, because they didn't have marketing backgrounds. They were level designers or coders or community managers that kind of just did it on the fly, where you have somebody coming in as a professional that had been there, done that, and now has a degree to kind of help perpetuate that.
Yeah.
And it was offsetting. So now it's much more, there's far more MBAs in gaming than there ever was. There's more people that look like you and me that are gamers, because now gaming isn't a nerdy thing. Gaming is a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I mean, it was not always fun trying to prove myself consistently that I was gamer enough.
Yeah.
It was just very odd. And then in business, are you business enough? Oh, you're just a gamer. Like, good
Lord.
Lord.
That's the other side too.
Yeah, so it was
the business people.
It was a constant battle.
Yeah.
So now, after having launched 2 successful global brands for Lenovo, people don't really give me any crap anymore. They're kind of like, okay, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you're a gamer. We get it. But now I want to make sure that nobody else really runs into that. So that's what kind of all the cool curriculum that's coming out, all these successful programs for esports, is getting these kids in to learning that CTE is not just robotics and coding, that there's tons of careers out there that they could just really like. Yeah. Or it's an entryway into finding something they may like, even outside of gaming. And I think that's why I'm blessed to be able to do what I do every day. I'm like, and a lot of people say, well, what's the best part about it? And it took me a while, because you can't really track kids' success over time, right? But if you look at a book is, there's lots of pages and chapters of a book or something like that. I'm not really a chapter in a book, right? But I'm the spine of the book. Without the spine, it's just a bunch of pages that you have to either staple together or loose leaf or whatever. So what I think I'm providing is I get to provide the beginning and the binding for what a child's career and success could be. And how cool is that? Like, I'm literally before the beginning.
Yeah.
And if I do my job correctly, there's going to be a lot more very successful kids out there that are doing something they never thought was capable, regardless of, who they love, who they pray to, how they identify. They're just a diverse population of people who are accepting of each other, that think that differences are amazing, and how do we make those to benefit the world and benefit what we have to do and benefit our careers and benefit our families in the future. So maybe that's a little more, galactic in my view, but it's kind of neat the way at least I think about it.
Yeah, I think that is cool. And I won't quiz you on gaming, or
you can, although
how to get to Lon Lon Ranch or something like that. But like, no, I mean it's cool to look back, like hearing from your experience and saying like I want to pursue an MBA, and I also want to pursue gaming back when that was kind of outlandish. And now kids, because of, how the space has changed and how you're actively playing a part in that, they can say, like, I want to be in gaming, and it's not outlandish because there's opportunity for them. And that was because you were passionate about it. And if a kid is passionate about gaming, which, I mean, virtually like every kid is these days, that's really neat. That's really neat. And particularly in the school environment and for kids, like I'd love to hear from you just what you've seen as like a return or benefit of just kids getting into gaming or esports. Like I was talking to Caleb a little bit about that, of just like some of the things that kids can learn while they're there, even skills that a lot of parents might not fully grasp yet. But I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different things. When we see students, whether they be high school or a little bit younger in the middle schools where esports is kind of starting to grow now, but even in higher education, a lot of students, when they go into some sort of program for their university or high school or whatever, sometimes it's the first program they've ever been a part of. Mm-hmm. The good and the bad of the internet and online gaming is that certain students or young adults can become, in their introverted world, become extroverted because they don't have to be face-to-face with people.
Sure.
They know people, and I know people from my EverQuest days that I'm still friends with and I've known for 20 years, and I've never met them. Mm-hmm. So it is a good way for people to get out and meet people, even online, but you're still not really meeting them face-to-face. And sometimes that can be difficult. So even as children, even my son's age at 10 years old, while he's very outgoing because his mother and I are very outgoing, we teach him to look people in the eyes and things like that. Stereotypically, there's kids that are introverted that looking them in the eyes, they automatically go down.
Yeah.
They don't really know how to necessarily speak with other students or people their age. They don't know how to speak, definitely don't know how to speak to people that are older. So I think just those soft skills of being in an environment where they're safe to explore and be with other students that are like-minded and adults that are there to help them kind of come out of their shell is amazing. I think that's a great thing. But then you also start to see the other piece of, well, it's not just gaming, and gaming does a bunch of other stuff. If it is just gaming, hand-eye coordination, cool. That's been around for quite some time. But what about just talking and working as a team? Yeah. Teamwork, leadership, how to take a role or how to step back, how to be communicative on Discord when you're talking to your team. Yeah. And how do you take loss? How do you take win? Like, what's the stress? If you are, I'll use Apex just as a kind of a thing because the Apex Legends Global Series was here in Raleigh back in August. You have 20 professional teams up there, and if you don't think that near the end, regardless of whether there's money on the line or not, that they're not sweating bullets and their hearts aren't pounding when you're down to the bottom three or the top three, there's only 3 teams left, and you got somebody on a perch, placed and they're playing defensive. You have another one underneath them and they can't get out, and then you've got one on the fringe kind of picking them both off. Who's going to win? That's one thing, but then when you put $1 million on the line, like that is a lot of pressure. So you also have to understand, I think, what is becoming understandable and seeing more of it is that these students are also starting to be trained as athletes. So their mental health is a big deal. And a lot of kids that come in may not have necessarily bad mental health, but they might not be aware of it either. Just some place to talk to, somebody to talk to, knowing that they're setting it up and that, they don't always have to be perfect. But having the balance of mental health, physical health, and then education on top of that, as well as just making sure that there's a group of people that you can talk to is kind of a big deal. And I think that's what I'm helping to and helping schools to kind of see. There's a wonderful company called Fit Gamer that actually focuses on that mental health awareness piece as well as the physical. So they make sure that and we're starting to see this in a lot of not only professional teams, but teams that want to be just varsity level or competitive. They're getting 8 hours of sleep. They're not playing for 16 hours a day anymore. They're playing for 4. They're taking a break. They're eating protein. They're taking a nap. They're going to work out. They're walking. They're doing meditation. It's changing into what a professional athlete would be. So the stereotypical gamer that we used to think of being in their basement or in their room and it's completely dark and they're slamming Red Bulls and eating cheesy poofs. And again, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a Monster drink and a cheesy poof every now and then. But those days are coming to a halt because those are negatives.
Sure.
And we want to get those kids out of those situations. And sometimes they just don't know that they don't know how to take the next step. And with that next step, we also see that there's a lot of kids that have never been coached. You're 21 years old, you're the captain of your League of Legends team, and you do pretty well, or you think you do pretty well until a coach comes in and starts pointing some things out that could be better. A trained coach, not just somebody that used to play the game and is talking about it, but through NACAD and all these other organizations that are training coaches, we have seen and heard that these captains don't want to be questioned. And these players don't want to be questioned. And when it comes down, and they just go out of the room. They're like, I quit, I'm done. Because somebody has come in with more experience and is trying to build a team mechanic. And that captain it can be toxic. They might not be creating the same rules. They might not be set up to be a leader as a captain. They just are the kill leader. That doesn't mean you're the captain. It just means, whatever. So the ability to also be coached at a younger age and know that somebody telling you that, hey, there's a better way to do it, don't take it to heart. I've been getting barked at since I was 4 years old on the soccer field, right? By the time I got to high school, I was just like, whatever, that's what coaches do. But if you're just introducing coaching at 20 years old, that can be radically jarring to people who thought they were doing it amazing because they came in third place in their Rocket League team or their tournament last year. I think you're starting to see that shift as well. It's that mental health, it's the coaching, it's everything that's kind of coming together and setting these kids up for success regardless of what that success may be.
I mean, competition is great for lots of reasons that you mentioned, and being on a team is great. I mean, that's why a lot of kids aren't playing soccer as a 6 or 7 year old because they're going to be the next Messi. Like their parents want them to meet other people and develop those skills. And it's to me, I mean, seeing the connection between just the being on a team means, and like also being somebody who's played video games since the Game Boy Advance. Like,
nicely done.
It is a clear connection. We also have seen, some parents that may not have been gamers not fully understand it yet. But now, being in schools and people like Caleb who are very much like focusing on children, like the connection is there. The next question I wanted to ask was more geographic, like being both of us in Raleigh. This seems to be kind of a hotbed for the gaming industry. Like you mentioned, there's been tournaments here for Apex, Fortnite, a few other things as well. Why is it that Raleigh is the way it is for gaming?
There's a couple different reasons. Representative Sane has been an amazing forward thinker in terms of getting students into the space, what gets them interested, but also knowing from that same aspect that there are other revenue drivers inbound to Raleigh from a tourist perspective that we have the options to do. We have PNC Arena, we have the convention center, we have all the infrastructure to do esports. Luckily, Representative Sane, also a gamer, kind of saw that and worked with the Greater Raleigh Esports Alliance and I don't think I have that acronym correct, but that's who
Yeah.
they are. Lauren Gold, Ed Tomasi, and some others are part of that. And they really wanted to make sure that there was a way to bring an inbound aspect of esports here from a tourism perspective, because North Carolina wasn't known for esports. It was known for its beaches or the mountains and all the craft beer that they have over there, which are delicious. They wanted something more for Raleigh. And as Representative Sain and I have spoken about multiple times outside of the competitive piece, it's the fact that if you look at Raleigh in general, the workforce is really already set up and tiered here. So, and that's why schools like UNC Greensboro and other groups within North Carolina are kind of building out a multifunctional curriculum for high school into college. That's why they want kind of like this tiered approach of how do we take all these great students with all these great schools. I mean, right in between us where we're sitting right now is Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, and NC State, not to mention Elon, NC Central, Shaw, and I'm probably missing some that are literally right down the street.
Wake Forest.
And Wake Forest, is an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
You have all these amazing schools, not to mention the UNC network, UNC Charlotte and Wilmington and Asheville. You have all these students that could learn something, and then if we have an inbound need of workforce, they don't have to go anywhere. Yeah. They could stay right here and start their internships here, start their jobs here, and I think that goes back to what you had originally stated, in that these kids with CTE and learning, only about 10% of kids in any of these programs actually want to be competitive.
Yeah.
They love the gaming aspect. They love meeting people. They love hanging out. Why wouldn't you? Nerding out with people like we're doing. I mean, I'm not necessarily getting paid for this, but at the same time, I'm getting paid for this, right? Because of my position. We get to talk about gaming for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm not a professional gamer, nor will I be anymore. Those days are long gone. But these students have the ability that are not that 10% to get into event planning, production, shoutcasting, or just broadcasting in general, marketing, business, finance, accounting, and yes, engineering and coding are part of that. But it doesn't have to necessarily be in gaming. It could be within that esports space, and that is where a lot of these jobs are being created. They don't have enough professionals that are the gamer, that merge both worlds like I did back in the day. Now there's more of me, but now they need more people who have been there, done that in high school, college, are getting the degree to kind of finalize and really create structure around what they're learning and thinking, so that when they come out of college, or even in college, they're either already working on full-time internships, they're working with DreamHack or Intel or Microsoft or Ubisoft or Epic Games right down the road. And they get hired because they already have that, or they go somewhere else, but they're trying to keep it here.
Yeah.
So I think the more people see that we're already built in for Raleigh, North Carolina, and then as it expands into the different parts of North Carolina, you see that companies can come here and literally have a full staff, prepared, ready, and experienced. And I don't think that happens a lot of other places.
Yeah, and like a whole ecosystem has been built around gaming. Like, it's interesting you're mentioning all of the different things that they could do within gaming, and like a lot of that has grown rapidly over the past 5 to 10 years. I mean, even like 100 Thieves, the organization out in LA, like they have incredible business people who work there, and incredible marketing people and influencers and graphic designers that are making a lifestyle apparel that sells out in 5 minutes every time they do a drop. And it's like more than just a group of gamers that are competing, which is exciting. It's exciting to see. I know that there's been some difficulty, in the recent kind of years as well, but that is with any industry. And so, I guess like my final question is really like, what's next? What's on the horizon? You pick kind of what you wanted to talk about, whether that's Lenovo or just esports in general, but I'd love to hear sort of where you feel like things are headed and what's exciting in the world of Jeff?
Yeah, well, that's a bunch of stuff. In the industry in general, I think we're going to see, and I called this out a couple of years ago, and it just happened to come true. We're going to start to see a valuation of esports companies and platforms change. We saw that with FaZe Clan. And obviously, I don't know any of the team. I don't know any of that crew, so nothing I say is beneficial or non. But we saw that they went up for IPO, and those numbers have now crashed considerably. So, and what I called out a couple of years ago is kind of like it's like kind of like a house of cards. There has to be a valuation and validity towards the brands and what they're bringing in. The days of somebody like a TSM, or any of them, it could be Fnatic, could be Evil Geniuses, any of them. The days of, and influencers in general, just generalized influencers on YouTube and Twitch, of, hey, I will slap your logo on here and I'll mention it once, and that's valid. Those days are coming to a screeching halt, if not gone. They need brands, and that's really what a lot of these are now, where Fnatic used to just, is still one of the number one esports teams in the world. Their influence in getting page views means squat if the advertiser isn't making sales or a goal off of that. What are the key performance indicators of that? And I think you're starting to see that shift. You're starting to see more business people like me getting pulled in by major organizations to say, we were influencers for too long. How do we change influence into actual tangible results for people who are sponsoring? Because, with the way everything's going right now, you see a lot of people pulling back on advertising in general. Well, when that happens, and if 80% of your revenue is based off of sponsorships, you're in deep trouble. So I think you're going to start to see, hey, how do all these companies starting to bring in more financial and people who understand the gaming world that are also professionals in the gaming world, like myself, getting picked up and saying, okay, we want you to, how the heck do we make money and transition out of just page views into something else? So I think that's one thing that's really cool. Obviously, in technology, we have AR coming out. We have, the integration of mixed reality with VR. Apple just released their Apple AR goggles, which are $3,500.
There's some expensive ski goggles.
Those are some expensive ski goggles, and it's too much. I'm an early adopter, but I'm not like bleeding edge like that is. So, and I would love to say that $3,500 is, it's nothing. I'll buy two. It's not that way. Not when you have kids and a family and a house and stuff like that. So, what's going to happen there is really cool to see. Unreal Engine 5 doing great things not only for gaming, but for broadcasting what metaverse could look like. But outside of that, movies, television, green screen, they're really taking it to another level of what just used to be a game engine. Awesome. Can't wait to see more of what Epic is bringing out. And then you have stuff that we're obviously, that I'm trying to accomplish. So, Lenovo is about to, I just got approved to launch our Lenovo Esports event services.
Cool.
So what we've heard from a lot of schools is, hey, we want to do esports. We don't really get it. And that's going to happen. Because, there's a lot of people that are stakeholders at schools that weren't gamers, aren't gamers, could potentially be older and just don't get it. And there's also a lot of companies that have wanted to get product and rent product and haven't been able to. So we got approved. We're bringing out 100 units to start, and they're top Legion 7 machines with RTX 4090s and i9s. And you can rent that along with all the accessories and the monitor and a gaming server, so that you can actually rent that and bring it to your school.
Cool.
Set it up very quickly, put the games on that you need. Everything runs off the server, so you don't need to update 20 to 100 PCs. So much quicker. And while that's great, we layered in the fact of setup and breakdown. We've layered in the fact of on-site IT support. And then we've layered in the fact of event services and teams that can come in and actually help not only just run the event for them, but actually allow students to shadow them being the producer, to shadow them being the event planner, to shadow them with all the marketing so that they understand what they could potentially get into. And while this is great potentially from a revenue perspective for Lenovo, because I have to make Lenovo money sometime,
Sure, yeah.
what we're seeing from not only students but stakeholders and parents is this is the first look at what this could be. It's not just sitting down and playing games. They get a hands-on experience of what it would be to take to run a space, what it would look like in their space. Parents can see the interaction between the kids and how excited they get. And then we have people there that can talk to them about, hey, these are all literally careers. So I think it is a 360-degree offering that is really meant to help schools onboard it, but visually understand better.
Sure.
And then get everybody pumped about it because of what it could do.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. Nobody has it anywhere else in the country or the world really to this level. We're going to be expanding that out. And then we have a whole bunch of other stuff coming down the pipe that I'm working on, solutions. Again, our competitor is very much product heavy. And as a solutions manager and kind of what I do, normally solution managers only do like 1 or 2 projects, like they have them running in parallel. I have 13 running in different levels right now. But it's just because there's so many cool things happening in esports and there's so much opportunity. And these clients of ours, which are schools that want to be successful, are saying, Jeff, what do you do for this? And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, it's a gap. Well, if enough schools say that, I now have the ability to build a business case around it, and what can we do to fill that gap?
Yeah.
And that's the coolest part of my job, is I get to design things that people actually need, not stuff we're just trying to pitch out and sell.
Yeah.
And except for the bookmark stuff, I want to be that piece for the students.
Yeah.
But there's all of that is really cool stuff. And all these kids getting ready to succeed and the stories that they're going to tell in the next 5 years when you have them on your podcast. I started at UNCG, or I started at UNC Wilmington, or I was in high school and now I'm doing this because it gave me the confidence to start my own chapter or my own league or whatever. All the cool stuff we can't even think about coming out of these kids is going to be absolutely amazing.
Sure. Yeah, it's such an exciting reality to know that it will grow, like it's inevitable. And the role that you've played in kind of helping that get off the ground and continue and develop. But thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. Loved hearing from you. Folks, be on the lookout for this new program rolling out from Lenovo. And Jeff, thank you.
Yeah, you're the man. Thanks for listening to me. Hopefully everybody watching didn't nod off somewhere in there from me talking too much, but it was awesome. If you ever want me back to nerd out, you let me know, man.
Great.